We're going to go ahead and get started. I have 4:30, so welcome. I know we have a lot of people in the room, a lot of outside agencies. Welcome to Newport News. We're always excited to have you and to partner with you. We're going to go ahead and get started. I know we have a lot to cover today, so at 5 o'clock, no later, then I'm going to just cut you off. I know it's a lot of information, so for council, I know there's going to be some questions, but at 5, we're going to have to talk about the CIP. It's really important for staff to get some things started. So turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Manager Archer. It's a pleasure to be before you. It's been a little while since we've had an opportunity to visit with you, and we're glad to provide an overview of recent activities that Hampton Roads Transit has been very involved in. Dr. Woodbury represents you all very well. She's our chair. And we certainly appreciate her leadership, and we certainly, Mayor Jones and Councilman Ely recently participated in the ride-along. We certainly appreciate that with Congressman Scott. We thought that was a very excellent event, and thank you so much. We also work very closely with your staff, Lisa and Constantino, Sheila, Angela Hopkins, you name it. So what we'd like to do is to cover 3 topics: an overview of some of the recent accomplishments, which I will cover. Then we're going to invite Ray Amoruso, our Chief of Planning, to talk about the Peninsula BRT project. And we have Amy Brazil, who's going to speak to the micro-transit pilot, which was very successful, and we've received funding for another year of that program. We've got to bid it out, but we think that's going to be a nice addition to our services. First of all, I really want to talk about how, you know, with the support of the General Assembly, and we received dedicated funding in the 2020 General Assembly session. And let me say, that's a game changer for this region, because quite frankly, we have had historically, one might call a balkanized system, in which cities have different service levels, different service hours to some extent. So if you're navigating the region by transit, it can be very difficult, very time consuming. So what we've really been focused on with the dedicated funding is to improve service hours and frequency. We were very proud to implement 15-minute service on the Route 112, as well as recently on the 114. And what we're beginning to see is really the theory is true. Increased frequency equals freedom, and it attracts and improves service for the transit dependent, but it also creates a situation where individuals, choice riders, can choose to take transit if it's convenient. So we really feel like this can help change the character of public transportation in this region. We've purchased new buses. You've seen the 757 Express logo, and we've worked very, very hard to provide the equipment that's needed. Now, when we talk about expanding and upgrading passenger amenities, Newport News is at the top of the list. Over 107 bus stops have been improved, including 83 shelters and 24 benches. And let me say, we feel very strongly about that, because we want our customers to be treated with dignity. And as Ray always reminds us, it's not when you get on the bus, but quite frankly, it's when you get to the stop, where you first get your impression of what public transit is all about. And we've worked very, very hard with your staff to improve the number of facilities, because nothing's more frustrating than to see one of our customers sitting on a shopping cart. We intend to change that and to treat our customers with dignity. We also are deploying next generation technologies, which includes a mobile fare collection, which will be a real game changer for us, as well as real-time bus data, so you know exactly when your bus is coming if there's been any delays. We're also upgrading our facilities. We were very pleased to get a state grant with the support of the commission to improve the Newport News Transit Center. We improved bus lanes and parking We also intend, as part of the upcoming capital improvements program, get some additional funding to improve the interior of the facility. So our work isn't done there, but we know more work needs to be done. We're also investing in our workforce. We've gotten the starting salaries with all of the benefits up to about $20 an hour, which is absolutely key in terms of basically getting quality individuals to be able to drive our buses and to fix our facilities and to fix our equipment. We're exploring new partnerships and innovative services. I mentioned the pilot program that was very, very successful, and I won't steal Amy's thunder. She'll speak to that. But we really see that as part of the changing picture of public transit. We think 20 years from now, transit's going to look a lot different. In some cases, you'll still have your major backbone routes with your larger vehicles, but we think that microtransit is going to play a significant role in the future. And certainly expanding outreach and ridership promotions is important. We offer free rides on Transit Equity Day, Earth Day in April, Juneteenth. We were so pleased to be able to do that in June, and certainly Election Day in November. Before I turn the mic over to Mr. Amoruso, I really like to always encourage those that I'm speaking to the fact that transit truly means business. And what we're focused on with the new funding is better reliability, faster commutes, and new connections. A lot of people don't know 60% of HRT customers are going to work and coming home from work. I think some people have the impression we're a social service, and those are very vital services. But that's not what we are about. We're about making sure that we support the overall economic fabric of our community and getting people to work, to appointments, you name it. That's absolutely key. It also addresses the issue that we are touching major employment destinations, such as Newport News Shipbuilding, Naval Station Norfolk, Centera, Riverside. So, you know, we recognize the fact, and I can certainly tell you when there's inclement weather and we discontinue services, I hear from vice presidents, presidents calling saying, when are you going to reestablish services? Because we've got to get our people to work. As we look to improve the regional backbone, and it's going to take us several years in this labor market, we will increase 127% the number of jobs served by public transit. So we really are headed in the right direction. And, you know, while some may never ride Hampton Roads Transit, I always make sure they recognize the fact that chances are you depend on someone who does. So everyone benefits from public transit. So, Mr. Amoruso, if we could just pivot and talk a bit about the Peninsula BRT project.
Good afternoon, Mayor Jones, members of council, Manager Archer. Dr. Woodbury had asked us to come because you all are pretty new here. For the most part, there's been a large turnover in council, and we had started this study back in 2019, looking at high-capacity transit opportunities on the peninsula, which essentially focused on bus rapid transit. What is bus rapid transit? It's a conveyance system similar to light rail without the infrastructure of light rail. No tracks, no overhead wires, but off-vehicle fare payment, multiple doors to enter and exit, sheltered locations at a station, level boarding, expedited transportation via high-frequency service. It could be in a dedicated guideway. It could be in a partially dedicated guideway. It could be mixed traffic. It could be curb running. It could be running in the middle of the lane. I have some images here. There are opportunities that we work with your staff when the study started in 2019 to look at queue jumps or signal prioritization for the vehicles to leap ahead of the regular traffic. And we worked out an alignment that shows 40% of the alignment would be in dedicated lanes, some of it running along the curbside, some of it in the medium of Jefferson Avenue. This is just a rendering of what a station concept would look like, and it doesn't necessarily mean articulated bus vehicles, but we have one depicted here. Primarily, the Peninsula BRT project that we looked at under the study was identified two key corridors, Jefferson Avenue, Mercury Boulevard, and the different colored lines represent the different configurations of going from Mercury Boulevard northbound to Jefferson, going from Mercury Boulevard southbound to Jefferson, the orange line showing going from top to bottom from Patrick Henry Mall down to 16th Street in a variety of configurations. The study at the time that we completed it, and it was interrupted briefly by the pandemic, more than briefly, shows that with the investment of bus rapid transit, we could see an increase in passengers conveyed with 15-minute service on these vehicles of over 4,200 passengers on a daily business, which is a third more than we carry now. These are, okay, Dr. Woodbury, these are 2045 projections. Travel time competitiveness, the trip from the top of the Jefferson Avenue to the bottom of Jefferson Avenue today takes almost 70 minutes via the 112. Even with 15-minute service frequencies, you're stopping every 3 blocks pretty much on a retail corridor. With bus rapid transit, it would be an overlay on top of the local bus system in which you would stop at key intersections, but you would have a competitive travel time that an automobile would do at the same time from Patrick Henry to 16th Street. I think the biggest thing I want to talk about here today is we were going to seek federal funds through a discretionary grant program that's authorized by the United States Congress called New Starts and Small Starts. So it's very important to understand how that program works. The costs escalated, and this was work done in 2020. As we all know, costs of everything has gone up since then. The study's been done for a while now. But if we escalate the cost a year of construction dollars, just to do the Jefferson corridor, which is all in Newport News, it would be $244 million, of which you can expect the feds to participate up to $150 million, assuming we get that discretionary grant, which means the city would be on the hook for providing the $97 million difference to match the federal funds. And then you could see Mercury Boulevard would be the responsibility of Hampton at the same level. Annual operating costs would increase. By the year 2028, we project that Newport News, in order to provide the overlay, could be as high as $6.4 million in addition to what you support today. I just wanted to put that out there. Because we're seeking federal funds to build the project, we had to prepare a NEPA document, National Environmental Policy Act of 1969, which is essentially an environmental document. In this case, we defined a locally preferred alternative that City Council approved and adopted in 2021. And the Federal Transit Administration decided that the lowest order of NEPA documentation was all that we would need because of the minimal amount of disruption. It's pretty much in the public right-of-way, so a categorical exclusion for a fixed guideway that is existing transportation right-of-way. The environmental evaluation was conducted in 2021 through 2022. We got the documented CE approved by the Federal Transit Administration on May 3rd of 2023 this year, which clears the project for the next phase if the appetite is there to go to the next phase. We have a federal determination that there's no significant environmental impacts of this project. And these are just some things that you have in the slide that shows that we're not going to impact any natural, historic, visual, or traffic in any significant manner. The FTA has specific guidance for implementing categorical exclusions, saying that if you change any physical facet of the project as you move forward, you might have to revisit doing a supplemental CE. The Small Starts program, which this project would be eligible for, is under the Federal Transit Administration Capital Investment Grant Program. It's a discretionary program authorized annually by Congress. It's competitive. Only the best survive, the strongest in terms of ridership and cost effectiveness. But they will participate in the Small Starts project up to $150 million or 80% of the federal funding share, as I had said. 50% of your right-of-way has to be in some form of dedicated transit right-of-way. This is just a process that shows the next phase would be engineering and then leading to a Small Starts grant agreement. What does that mean? We would be ranked and rated at the end of engineering on all of these criteria related to mobility improvements, congestion relief, cost effectiveness, economic development opportunity, thoughtful land use, and then the financial strength of your plan. Where is the source of non-federal funds coming from to build the project and then to sustain the project through operations? Those are the questions that we would have to pass. Project development, entering small starts, requires that the political body, we're your agent, so to speak, Hampton Roads Transit, but you are the political body that if you want to move forward on this, would have to show through proof a commitment of all non-CIG funding through a capital improvement plan in which you program those dollars needed at the appropriate time to support construction. That would meet the FTA readiness requirements if we're successful in getting the discretionary grant. I went through that fast, but we have another presentation after this, and I think I'll start it. And Amy, why don't you come on up? We're going to co-present on the microtransit pilot program briefing.
I do have one question
Yes,
before we go to microtransit. I know we have the multimodal like Uptown Transportation Center. Can you speak about what's going to be the future of that, and is that going to impact current HRT, and what does that look like if we start to invest into BRT?
If we're talking about the Bland Boulevard station for Amtrak,
Correct.
we have 2 routes and a max route coming out of Gloucester that's scheduled to begin in a year and a half that would service that multimodal area. We have a couple of bus bays there. If BRT was to move forward, we can deviate the route to serve the Amtrak station as well. That's all to be worked out in operating plans of future phases. There's flexibility with bus rapid transit, unlike light rail. You can leave the guideway and re-enter the guideway at any point if there's a desire or if there's a significant feeling that there'll be a significant ridership generating from a nodal activity center like the transportation facility. So yes, the flexibility is there, Mayor.
Thank you.
I'll start with microtransit. So why microtransit? It's the buzzword of the industry, not just here in the Hampton Roads, but across the industry. We have an evolving marketplace. I grew up in New York City, and fixed route service is something we all use. Nobody would ever think about driving an automobile to go into Manhattan. But customer expectations are changing. First mile, last mile is very important. The average citizen today wants to understand how they could connect to high-frequency service. And what we find is that what we call community connectors, or smaller size vehicles that aren't operated on a large 40-foot bus, are essential to address the expectations of customers. So agencies are adapting to integrate these types of mobility services into the spectrum of all the services that HRT provides. We run 70 fixed bus routes in our system, 53 of them are local routes, and the others are express or commuter routes. How does microtransit work? Essentially, it's no different than when if you have a car that's still under warranty that you bought it from a dealership and you bring it into the service for repair. They have a courtesy shuttle in which they'll marry you up with a couple other people that have a common destination. You might be going to a hospital or the end of line of light rail or transit center activity, and they'll take a group of people in a courtesy shuttle. So microtransit is very much the same, except you do it by your cell phone. What you do is there's a cloud-based app that you make a request through the app. It goes to a collection point where someone assesses other demands, and you're told to meet the vehicle at a virtual bus stop, on an HRT bus stop, where you might find 2 or 3 of fellow citizens that have a common destination. And you share that ride, because it's a ride matching system, to either a fixed route service or a destination for work or a medical appointment or shopping. And that's the best way I can describe what microtransit is. We were awarded way back in 2019, hard to remember that, almost $1.6 million from the state for a 6-month pilot demonstration. We had to delay the implementation of that for nearly 2 years because during the pandemic, no one was going to get into a small 7-passenger van with strangers during COVID. So we were able to actually execute and start that service in July of last year, and we ran it for 6 months right through the first week of February of this year. The state provided $1.6 million. Each city provided the local match because of an 80-20 grant. So the city of Newport News and Virginia Beach each provided $238,000 to match the state grant. The demonstration grant, and from a state perspective and the city goals was, does microtransit improve mobility options for communities in a cost-effective manner, and also does it serve to help reduce traffic congestion? The question was asked, is there a role in the future for microtransit in HRT service area? Does it encourage what we call choice riders, people who would not think of using transit ordinarily for fixed route service, but might hop on a smaller vehicle that gets them close to their final destination? And can the state translate, the state was very interested in this, our pilot project experience to other areas in the Commonwealth? And the city, I have to say, was a great partner, and your staff worked with us hand in glove throughout the entire time. That was the overarching goal. The zone in Newport News was very different than the zone in Virginia Beach. The zone in Virginia Beach had an underperforming fixed route that served a particular community. The question was, can microtransit carry those few people? They had about 4 people per hour using a 40-foot bus. Can microtransit do better and more cost-effectively? The test case in Newport News was different. You have a community that's landlocked west of Warwick Boulevard that is not conducive to 40-foot buses traveling through them because of the cul-de-sac streets, the irregular street patterns, lack of curb and gutter in some cases. So is there a latent, the hypothesis was there a latent demand for transit-type services in those communities to connect to the 2 major retail corridors of Warwick and Jefferson Avenue? And you'll hear from Amy in a moment that indeed there was. The objective for the microtransit pilot project was to use this app-based booking of rides to move people around those 2 predefined zones. It was operated as a turnkey, meaning we went out for a request for proposal, accepted bids, and picked the best firm to provide the vehicles, the drivers, and the technology that made the reservation systems. Because today, HRT doesn't have those type of vehicles in its fleet, doesn't have non-commercial driver license operators, and so we had to go turnkey. I'm going to turn it over to Amy, and she's going to talk specifically about microtransit on the pilot results, and then I'll come back to wrap up.
All right, good afternoon. I'm going to give you a few items about the actual service and then give you what the outcome was of the service. So the pilot deployed those medium-sized vehicles. They were minivans, and I'll have a picture of those in just a few minutes. As Ray mentioned, the trip requests were done through the app on a phone, and they were shared with other customers. The Newport News zone was 20 square miles. We had a number of points of interest, just a few in Patrick Henry Mall, which is a popular spot. Chesapeake, sorry, I'm from Chesapeake, that's okay. Christopher Newport University, the Walmart, and the airport were all destinations. It did connect to 6 fixed route bus service routes. And one of the unintended positive consequences of this service is it was used by the community paramedicine program here in Newport News. Our service launched on July 10th, Monday through Friday, 5 a.m. to 9 p.m., and Saturday and Sunday service, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. We had 6 vehicles in Newport News. 2 of those vehicles were wheelchair-accessible vehicles. We had 5 in Newport News. 1 of those was a wheelchair-accessible vehicle, and 9 spares. During the service, it was so popular here in Newport News, we did have to move some of the vehicles from Virginia Beach up to Newport News to handle the demand. Yes. This is a picture of the vehicles that were used. Now for some results. The completed rides per month, you can see that every month we increased. To include the last month of January, that was the last full month, the pilot was supposed to end the first week of January, but we did have additional funding, so we extended it for another 30 days. As you can see in February, we did run the service for the first 8 days of that month, so we still had pretty decent ridership for the month, even though that service was ending. The month-over-month growth, as you can see, the blue line is the ridership, and the red lines was the people that were still creating accounts on the service. So every month we saw the increase. This is just a sample. I'm not going to go through this whole slide, but basically what this is showing you is if you were to take that same route either by foot or by your own vehicle or a bus service or the microtransit, if you were to start at 7:22 in the morning going from Great Oak Circle in Newport News to 819 City Center Boulevard, if you took your own vehicle, it's 5 minutes. If you walked, it's 26 minutes. If you took a bus, it's 57 minutes, and microtransit was 18 minutes. The average number of passengers per day, as you can see, this is mostly used by commuters and kids going to school. The Monday through Friday was definitely the highest days of service, with Friday being the highest.
About how many people in each vehicle?
On average, we had just under 2. Our goal was between 4 and 6. Because the pilot was only a 6-month pilot, it didn't have time to mature. We do believe if it went on for another year, that it would have matured and you would have seen that target we were aiming for. This is the average number of passengers by hour. As you can see, the 7 a.m. and the 4 p.m., you can see that's your commuters and the ones going to school that use the service during those times. The average wait times and trip duration. The blue line is your wait time, so anywhere from 9.9 minutes to 13 minutes during those busy times. And the average trip distance was just over 3 miles. The most popular destinations, this is probably no surprise, Walmart, Patrick Henry Mall, Menchville High School, Beachmont Drive, and Winter Haven. Both of those are apartment communities. I'm not going to go through all the survey data as we've only got 4 minutes left, but what I will say is we did a survey at the end of the pilot. 90% of the people that use the service had 0 or 1 vehicle in their home. One of the other important things to note is 40% of those people connected to an HRT fixed route likely at Patrick Henry Mall. And 30% of your respondents said that they would walk, drive, or take our paratransit service if they had to get somewhere. I'm going to turn this back over to Ray.
Thank you, Amy. So what does this mean? What did we learn? And I do want to address one issue that Dr. Woodbury asked at our commission meeting. It was a 6-month pilot demonstration that we had to go out and competitively procure the contractor that ran the service for us. She asked, why is there a gap before we could come back? Because we had to make another grant ask from the state for another 12 months of study, so we get a full calendar year. So the competitively procure contract was only for 6 months. We have to go back out on the street to make another procurement for another vendor, or the same vendor, whoever made the best person win. So we're on track for that. The RFP is going to go out in the fall. We hope to award the end of the year and start the service up again in March and April. But the lessons learned is we needed a longer pilot period to allow the ridership to mature. 6 months over the winter wasn't the most ideal time to try and mature ridership. It seems like we had the right number of fleets, especially fleet vehicles overall, although Newport News, we borrowed some of the vehicles from Virginia Beach. However, it looks like we need to have 1 or 2 more wheelchair accessible vehicles. Very much we heard from the customers that are using the system their expectation that microtransit fares should match the existing HRT bus fare structure, which basically is $2 for a one-way ride. What we found most in your particular zone in Newport News is, unlike Virginia Beach, where they were leaving their zone to get to other fixed route services in other city, most of the users here, it really did prove the case. You have a latent demand in those communities. Stayed within the zone and went to shopping and medical appointments in the schools within the zone, which is really encouraging because that means we've not been serving all these years people that want access to transit. So these are all new people to the system in your city that never thought of using transit before. There was an opportunity a couple of times people asked, could you tweak the zone a little bit? And so next time as we release the RFP, we're going to look at adding some additional touch points just beyond the perimeter that we had last time. Turnkey service delivery method, meaning we shopped it all out to somebody else, may not be the most cost-effective method. We're doing an in-house study as we speak to look at what we can bring in-house to be more cost-effective. I mean, the biggest challenge for us now is finding the operators and the vehicles and whether we lease them or we purchase them outright. Those are things that we have to compare as opposed to shopping out for a turnkey. So the next steps, we apply for the transit ridership. That's what the TRIP grant is, the Transit Ridership Incentive Program in February. We were awarded the money this June. We got a total of $2.8 million from the state. The grant amount needed to support 1 year of service is $3.5 million. It's an 80-20 split, so each city will provide 10% of the matching dollars that are required. That's $350,000 from each city. We're preparing that request for proposal. We did a briefing just like we're doing for you here a couple of weeks ago. City Council, Virginia Beach, and the city manager indicated that they were willing to participate again. We're hoping to get that same concurrence from your city. But what we need to do most importantly is investigate sustainable long-term funding for microtransit services. Either it comes through the regular cost allocation agreement that we negotiate every year with your city in terms of services, or we find some other way to fund microtransit services. And as I said, we're initiating a study to determine the best delivery methods. That's the end of the presentation, Mr. Mayor and
I got
Council.
a real quick question.
Yeah, we have time for 2 questions.
So with this microtransit, is it true in the line? So in other words, could a person take the microtransit without taking a bus route, and therefore we're not really getting the true meaning of the microtransit program?
There's that opportunity that someone that's living in one of those communities west of Warwick Boulevard might have a destination with 3 other individuals to go to Whole Foods. I'll pick that, and because they want to go shopping. So they're going just pure east to west. There's no need to connect north to south. So their opportunity is there, but truly most of them are connecting to the 112 to get to longer destination points.
They are a true customer.
Yes, they're still transit customers.
Do we have any more questions from council?
wanted to find out how do the people pay to get on there?
They pay through the app.
It's all through,
It's all digital.
through this.
So you have to have a
The-
debit card or?
There is a way for them to also call into customer service and purchase ride tickets, but I think we had one person do that.
It's like Uber app.
Thank you very much.
I really like that.
We appreciate the opportunity, and we're pretty close on time.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next up, we're going to have the fiscal year 2024 capital improvement plan.
So good afternoon, Council. This conversation was slated to be had with Council last meeting. So we're playing a little bit of catch-up on time here. Mr. Manager, I don't know if you want to make any comments before I start?
Members of council, good afternoon. As we really begin to wrap up our discussions regarding the 24 capital improvement plan, this will be one of our last sessions to really focus in on a few key projects to ensure that we have enough understanding from you about how you would like to proceed with the representation of these projects in the final plan. You'll see a slight variation based on our conversation or comments this afternoon that will be reflected in our next conversation when we present you the draft document that ultimately we would like to seek your approval on. So I think that, as Lisa Cipriano, our Director of Budget, works through her discussion this afternoon, what she's really looking to hear from you is sort of key input from you, an opportunity to ask questions. Again, this is a bit of an extension of some of the same conversation that we initiated at the retreat. We're just trying to ensure that we have a fundamental understanding of your preferences. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Just a very brief recap. City Council adopted the 23 CIP almost a year ago. We had the bond authorization to issue the debt to support the FY23 CIP done in September, almost a year ago. By city code, the city manager is required to present a proposed CIP to City Council by November the 1st. At the time that we were almost done with presenting and preparing the 24 is when we started getting the very large escalation costs in our construction projects, namely the Huntington Middle School and the Southeast Resource Community Area bids were coming in estimated much more than what we had actually planned for. So we needed to take a pause, get the bids in, have a look at all the other construction costs and all the other projects. So we brought forward the FY24 year of the adopted 23 CIP. So, and that particular CIP was a 4-year proposed CIP with the blank year in 2028. Layered on top of that, the outgoing city council wanted to give the incoming city council the opportunity to make the mark on the next 5 years in all future projects and set your own priorities. So that's why the outgoing city council did not choose to adopt a CIP in the traditional time period, so to speak, that we've recognized in the past. Very complicated line of numbers. We have these charts if you want to look at them in more detail, but you will see that the FY28 year is actually blank. That would allow council to give us the suggestions to move projects out or to populate that last year should you see something that there is particular that you want to be included in this CIP. With the proposed CIP, of course, we've talked about this with Kevin Roddy in our financial advisors with PFM. We are always looking at our debt management policies to see where we are at any particular time. That it gives us the ability to say how much debt we can borrow. That's one of the elements we look at when we're scoping out projects over a 5-year period. If we were to take into consideration and adopt this CIP the way it is presented to City Council today, we're in this far left-hand corner is what the extreme measures would be if everything went through the way it was planned. So all of our financial policies, we stay within those borders and ranges if this CIP were adopted as it is. This is just an example of what our debt would look like over time if this 4-year CIP were adopted as it is presented. Some debt falling off, but of course for the new projects, we would be taking on more debt. So as Mr. Archer suggested, this slide you'll be recognized from your retreat. Again, if we could have City Council's discussion on things that are in the 24 CIP, about moving them forward, keeping them in 24, focusing on any particular project. We know that we are near completing our obligation in the Choice Neighborhood Initiative. Past the early years in this CIP, we will have completed our official obligation for investment in that area. Of course, we will continue on helping that transformational area grow and develop over time. The largest consideration, of course, is the Huntington Middle School and SECRA combined project. As an example, we had included $40 million for each one of those 2 segments in our CIP. It's my understanding that the current estimate is at about $130 million, and that's one of the reasons we needed to stop and have a consideration about doing the project. Our engineering department worked with Quinn Evans to say, what if we phased it out, or what if we bid it as one project? For the cost-effective method, bidding both elements, both of those 2 large elements, the school itself and the resource area, as one project actually had greater efficiencies, both on staffing, timing, and resources and money. So the decision at this particular point is to look at this as one single project. What you will see in the adopted CIP is the money to flow more with the cash flows that need to go out as a single project instead of as 2 distinct projects. So we need City Council's concurrence with that and some elements that are under discussion under the final refining of the site in the plan. And then based on that, once that decision is made, hopefully we hear from you today, these other elements in 24, the Sherwood Master Plan, the Denby Warwick Lee Hall area, a new fire station, for design, future development of Riverview Farm Park, and then the other two recreational areas, the Stony Run Greenway and the boat trail, also would be in the design phase for FY24. So I don't know if City Council would like to take a moment and pause and have a discussion about any of these particular items.
Yeah, I do have a question. So I know we talked about in the retreat, the new fire station number 12, it wasn't a needed aspect for as the fire department's operational concerns. And I was thinking that we could save some of the money that we would put towards that and to put it towards some of our future school needs, especially like Warwick High School needs to be built at some point. But I thought we were going to take that off.
We need to hear that, so
Yeah.
if that's council's.
Yeah, I thought, I was under the assumption that was what we had agreed upon. That was one of the projects we would push back, but I may be wrong.
The fire
The
station.
fire station. Because you had asked the question if that would impact the timeframe of getting to where.
Respond to a fire.
The response time, and I think you said it wasn't outside of what that required time was at the moment.
This is design money in '24 for the design of facility site selection.
Okay.
There's a lot of work that goes into determining run times and response times. The fire department has identified that eventually there will be need in the Menchville area. Is it imminent today? I would say no, from my understanding, but it will be a consideration for future capital plans.
Okay, so why wouldn't we need to design today? Because I would think you want to design it maybe a year or two before you actually need the project, so that way you're not spending money on a design and then come back later on and have to modify the design because there may be new changes in how a fire department operates itself. So I'm
Yeah,
not
we
really.
could, this isn't, that's what we're asking is if there's the element of moving it
Okay.
further out without an impact.
Okay.
Okay, so if that's,
I would like to move around, that way we can make sure we have money saved up for some of these school projects we have coming down the line. Make sure we're not kicking the can down the road for schools, because the schools have come back and said they need money for different renovations, and I know Warwick High School is one of the items, and want to make sure that stays in the plan and not put money toward the design for an item that right now we haven't really set a time period for where it has to be built.
I neglected to point out, and forgive me for doing that, in the Huntington Middle School, schools was very successful in receiving a school construction grant of $21 million. So that helps close the funding gap of the $130 million for the school. We know that Warwick High School, the renovation for Warwick High School is an eligible candidate, and we're hoping that the success of the Huntington Middle School construction grant will help us. Now, Warwick renovation is in a future year in this CIP, so, and we also have included $10 million of annual renovation for school projects in each year of the CIP.
So-
As I understand it, the school's gotten a lot of extra money. I talked to a teacher the other day who's been teaching, but she got a 10% raise, 10%, and she's been teaching a long time, but it was incredible how much they are getting through the monies that came from the state, right?
But
Some of it's compression.
Yeah, so just to refocus, so the main thing, the first thing before we move anything else is Mr. Archer's going to come in and talk about some additions to Huntington. I know there's a delta that we have to discuss today, and then from there we can start to move some stuff around. But I do want to make sure that the first domino that has to happen is Huntington.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So there's an important component of the Southeast Community Resource Center plan that some of us had an opportunity to visit with the schools yesterday to explore in more detail. And so the important piece of information regarding that plan is that we really need to anticipate the school board taking action to amend the design for the Southeast Community Resource Area plan, and their amendment will be to request, and they haven't, mind you, they haven't taken action yet. So the way the MOU is structured between the city administration and the schools, schools approves the final design. Once schools approves the design, then council appropriates funding for the project. So it's been structured for us to have this dialogue to reach this point for the last several years. So there's been some discussion back and forth, and even at the retreat, we discussed this aspect of whether or not there was a desire for council to work with the schools to see if there was interest and to determine the extent of that interest for the addition of an athletic track. So the design that was presented to us had three options. One was the existing 400-meter community walk, which is just 2 lanes, and it's simply an asphalt course overlaid with a rubberized texture to allow the community to walk and take advantage of this center once it's completed. The addition of an athletic track was something that has been discussed recently because of the school's desire to expand athletic programs through its middle schools. And this was a preference that, again, has been discussed back and forth between the two parties. We have learned that the schools indeed, as a preference, would like to see the addition of an athletic track which would surround the multipurpose field and allow them to further athletics at that school. The third option, which the schools had no interest in pursuing, was the addition of a full-fledged sports-level competition track. And the magnitude of this track, when overlaid on the site, would result in the loss of many amenities at the facility, in addition to the cost of that particular design. So what we can anticipate is the schools taking action on the 15th to recommend the addition of a athletic track, and we made it very clear that this outcome would result in the city needing to find the additional funding to add to the project, which is approximately, at this particular point in time, $1.4 million, and that it would delay the construction schedule because the addition of the track requires redesign and resubmittal of the design specifications in order to be able to bid the project. So those points were discussed and shared with the school in dialogue. And so really the conversation for us as we go forward, because the time will come when we'll need to determine whether, at what level we're going to appropriate funding for the project, if that is an acceptable course of action for this public body.
So we picked Plan 2.
Yep.
And that was a good meeting. I think that's what we should do as a city moving forward, relationship-wise, to have the council people. I mean, that was a good idea to have council people and the school board. So we no longer keep doing all this meeting and one body doesn't know that we meet and that way we can move forward. So I'm glad it worked out.
And so what it basically looks like is option 2 is preferred from the school board. That's going to have, the ask from the city is about $1.4 million. The timeline is going to be pushed back just a little bit, but I think it's important that we get this right. I know costs are escalating, and so I think, correct me if I'm wrong, we're going to have to just find an additional $1.4 million, move it from fiscal year 24 into a later year. Is that correct?
What we would do is, we had Huntington Middle School as a standalone project in the FY23 bond authorization. Excuse me. We have SECRA in this CIP split between 24 and 25. When we bring the proposed 24 CIP back to City Council in September, it'll match the cash flow a little bit differently as one project. So it'll look more like 40, 10, and $3 million over a 3-year period to smooth out when we have to pay out on those projects. So we can add the additional $1.4 million in one of those 3 years, as long as we're paying cash out when the construction matches up.
And to Councilman Long's point, it does seem that the fire station is about $1 million. We could.
For design.
Yeah. Okay. Vice Mayor.
So just quick point of clarity. So just based on what you just said, Lisa, we could keep everything on here as is and still be able to fund the additional requirements for this track. Is that correct?
Yes. We would just put it in an out year, because now we're matching cash flow for when we have to pay it, instead of putting in one project in one large number. So, yes, we can do that.
So, I mean,
I
taking it, removing it, well.
I mean, I would still push the design only because we don't know when we're gonna actually build the fire station. And I don't wanna have a design on the books that needs to then go back and be redesigned. So that's a waste of money. We could take that $1 million there and put it towards some project that we have extra on that
So,
CFP.
so my only question is, so then, if we were planning to design it now, what was the follow-up? Was the goal to build it in 2 years, or there was no goal?
In this CIP, the design was in '24,
Right.
and then the actual construction would be in '25 and '26. So by moving it out 2 or 3 years, we could keep that pace if there aren't other projects that come along in that time period that may replace them.
Yeah, so, but the question becomes is, do we need that fire station? Because that was the question asked on retreat, is does it change the response time for our fire department? I thought the fire chief had came back and said it's not going to affect current operations. It's not in the plan that's going to change how we're responding to fires. And that was my take on it from the retreat. So now hearing that we need to build this fire station, I'm not sure if is this a nice thing to do, or is it something we really need to do? Because we have a lot of things we need to do, and I don't want to put a nice thing to do in front of some of those needs in the city.
As I understand it, eventually will need to be built in that type of in that area of Mitchville for demand, eventually.
I understand that.
Go ahead, Al.
If you would like, I mean, Acting Chief Wesley Rogers is here.
Please.
Perhaps you would like to hear from Chief Rogers.
Yes, sir. So Fire Station 12 is going to be built for the Mitchville area.
Can we have him just use a mic just for people who are listening?
Right, just press the green button. Here you go.
So for Fire Station 12, that's going to be for our Mitchville area. As of right now, with the heavy development that's with the intersection of Oyster Point, that fire station that sits at Oyster Point is the response for that district. As we see Mitchville being built out, or that Riverview area being built out, it will need that fire station in that area. So we're perfectly fine if we push that out a couple years, because we have to get staffing and apparatus to also fill those stations out as well. Plus, it gives us an opportunity to build up on some infrastructure that we currently have that's been aging, that we need to remodel as well. So we're perfectly fine with moving that out. As that development starts building out in Riverview, that will need to be a priority for that area.
I was going to say Riverview Park is going, that area is not that well covered right now.
Yes, ma'am.
And so I don't want to see it moved out too much.
No, I don't.
I really don't, because I think we have to anticipate all that development in that area that's going on right now. And that's this old city farm, which is going to be the Riverview Park. So I think we need it coverage-wise.
I agree. We do need it at that point. I think we just need to time it properly to make sure we're going to build it at the right time. And like you said, the apparatus that comes with it, still we have to maintain that building at that time period. So if we can time it, as we see Riverview Farm Park area be built out, I think it would be a great time to bring it back into the plan and just always be thinking about it. I'm not saying kick it out forever, because I mean, that's the area that we're building out. I would like to see it built out. But I don't think we just need to just build it just because. I mean,
This is a building, this is, looks like preparation, the Riverview Farm Park and that area, in the Mitchville area. So it's now, I mean, it's plans now, but it's coming, is what I'm saying.
Yes, ma'am. So that would be for the design, which would take about a year process to get through the design phase.
Right.
And we would look at construction about 2 years from now.
Already.
Well,
Is what?
So we can work with the fire department in
Figure-
timing.
yeah.
Absolutely.
I
Correct.
think it'd be time. Just
Absolutely.
make sure the time is.
You don't want to have a design and then it's 3 years later and you got to redesign. That's the
That's the point. That's what I was getting at.
Do we have any more questions? I have a few. If I can jump ahead. For Jefferson Lab and the Tech Center for fiscal year '24, I know we're awaiting some news. Is that going to, let's say we're able to get the award, how much is that going to incur for fiscal year '25?
So what we have in the plan is the development of the tech center area around Jefferson Lab, the drill field area, the roadway, the amenities. We have a regular and paced development that is roughly a couple of $1 million every year. So should we get a very favorable award and need to escalate it, we will find a way to accommodate that area.
Thank you.
And I want, oh,
Yeah, go ahead.
okay, so what happened around the Southeast Community Resource Center? I thought a lot of that came from the ARPA money. The funding for that came from the ARPA money.
No. Early Childhood Development Center.
Because in the secret is Doris Miller and all that?
No, all city money,
Okay,
except for the grant, except for the school construction grant, yeah.
I just have 3 more items I just want to bring to council's attention and the manager. So I know right now for Riverview Farm Park, we have $0 allocated for this year. I do think we need to have like a full work session on that. I think, I'm not sure what council as a body wants to do with the park. I know we're doing some things with it, but I just want to mark that. I think eventually, whether it's next fiscal quarter, we should talk about our plan for the park going forward. Number 2, I wanted to flag, right now, Councilman Long, we have the $50 million to fiscal year '27 for Warwick High School. I do think we need to talk to our school board counterparts.
Yeah.
We saw Huntington get pushed out years and years and years. We're already getting some calls and emails about Warwick High School, so I just want to make sure everyone's on the same page with that $50 million isn't until 4 years from now. And the last thing for the manager, I have a question. I know I'm getting a lot of emails from the judges about the courthouse. Is that on here, or is that included somewhere else?
We have $1 million for design for the courthouse. We recently had a discussion about, with the addition of one additional judge, and for courtroom safety, building out the municipal courtroom on the second floor of the municipal building down here. That is approximately a $5 million project that we don't have budgeted for. So we would be including that into this CIP that you'll see in the future. But we do have the design in the CIP for the courthouse.
And that design is for where it currently stands right now. I think I remember during the retreat, it was
It's
supposed to
the
move
area
down. Right.
right here on the corner of Huntington and 25th Street, that kind of vacant parking lot area across from the parking garage.
Okay.
That's the initial thought and plan. It may end up, sites to accommodate the need.
So what is, so from the Riverview Farm Park, what was your thoughts on reconvening? Because, that's one thing we talked about in retreat as well, is, having a citizen advisory committee built around citizens in the area to talk about the Riverview Farm Park. But right now, where are we at as far as actually having that design, or actually starting looking at the design of the Riverview Farm Park?
That we had a little bit of time to work with because of the HRSD wells that are being put in and the trail that is going around the site. That and again, with the new council coming in and maybe having a different vision. As far as I know, it hasn't been started formally. There's been a lot of informal discussions, but we have some time because of the amount of work that HRSD is putting in the site right now.
Okay.
And I think we need to look at what HRSC has proposed and has already vetted with the community. I mean, I know people are coming in now and saying, wait a minute, we want something else, but this is all
Yeah, I'm not talking about the trail. HRSD's is building a trail. I'm talking about actually, what are we gonna do with the park after the trail is being built? I wanna kinda get ahead of that, so we're not gonna wait down the line and decide.
Right, I understand what
Yeah.
you're saying, but I'm saying, we have to look at their plan, what they've got planned now, before we can start interjecting things, I think.
Is the plan already developed for the
No.
trail? Or for?
Oh, for the
full
the
trail.
trail,
Yeah.
the trail is,
So we
but
could-
for the rest of the site, no, sir, it's not.
That's right, so we can start integrating in. I mean, it's not,
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about the
Oh, okay.
trail is what I'm talking about, they've already designed that.
right.
So I would not like to see them have to go back and redesign.
Oh, yeah, I don't want to redesign. It's going to, whatever the plan is going to be, is going to integrate in that HRSD trail.
Yeah, and the park's been a sort of political liability for a long time. I just think whatever happens, that I think it'd be helpful for staff to know what is our sort of vision for it, trail, excluding the trail, and that way we can start to bake things in. Because as you look at sort of the next 5 years, like, I mean, that's really when all of our terms are sort of done. So just going to be important going forward. We can work and just make sure that we actually have a work session on that. Do we have any more questions about CIP?
I guess a recap, are we clear on?
So what I heard was work with the fire department to move out Fire Station Number 12, design and construction, to reflect the development in the Menchville area. Huntington Middle School, option number 2 on the athletic track, which includes $1.4 million and additional design and construction time. If Tech Center develops quicker than anticipated, how would we be responsive to that? And then a full work session on Riverview Farm Park, the vision for that area in the future. The placement of work, high school renovation in a future year, and the funding for a replacement courthouse. Any other sensitive areas?
I think that's it.
Okay, so our next steps are to, the recap that we just went through, to incorporate it in the CIP. In the city council meetings in September, we will bring forward a revised CIP to reflect these changes and other things that we know have emerged over the time. We will be asking city council to adopt a 24 CIP, which is important because included in the CIP is transportation grant match for several projects on streets that we cannot move forward, nor move forward on our cash capital until we have an adopted CIP. And then all of a sudden, it'll be before November 1st again, we'll have a revised 25 CIP for city council's consideration. Okay?
Perfect. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
We're right on time, which I know I appreciate. So next, we're going to have comments, ideas, suggestions. So we're actually going to start with the city clerk, and we're going to go this way, because I know the manager has something he wants to talk about. City attorney, city manager.
Yeah, should be enough for everybody. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, let me say to you that I have to be somewhat apologetic that I couldn't generate this information for you in a more what I would call workmanlike manner. The request that I'm going to share with you has come to my attention since our last meeting. And since it involves a request from Andrew Shannon to support the Southeast Community Day Parade, I have no other opportunity to present this information to you except for our work session this afternoon. So I've tried to summarize for you the request and lay out a plan of action for you should you choose to proceed and grant the request. So I essentially received an initial request from Andrew Shannon on July the 28th in the amount of $15,000 to support the Southeast Community Day Parade and Festival. This request was subsequently amended to $7,500. As you all know, the Southeast Community Day Parade and Festival is scheduled to begin on Saturday, September the 9th. The initial request was for pony rides, inflatable balloons, and entertainment, including a national performing artist. The revised request is for performing artist expenses only. As a city-sponsored parade, the city will be responsible, as we do for all such activities, for equipment rental, staging and barricades, and audio support and announcers. Standard public safety, traffic, and parks and recreation support will be provided as with any, again, city-sponsored event. Should you wish to proceed and grant the $7,500 to Andrew Shannon for performing artist, I recommend the following conditions. One, parade organizer shall submit a list of performers and contracts to the city by September 1st. The city will make direct payment to performers not to exceed the total amount of the request in the amount of $7,500, and that the request, as we use to base decisions, charitable contributions to any nonprofit organization, should be consistent with the Code of Virginia, Section 15.2-953, which establishes the authority of localities to make donations to nonprofit organizations. Therefore, should council wish to support this request, you may appropriate $7,500 from council contingency to support performers at the Southeast Community Day Parade on September the 9th.
And I want to thank Mr. Archer for all his hard work. We had a lot of phone calls. Normally, in the future, we're going to make sure that you aren't just walking into a work session and you have something in front of you. But due to the nature of the parade and the timeline, we only have one council meeting this month. It has to be sort of tonight. And so next time, we're going to make sure that everyone has a longer sort of duration to read it. But I do want to thank you on your diligence with this.
Could I ask
Yeah,
a
thank you.
What, in the past, what has been our contribution in the past?
Yes, so I think in anticipation of this question, I have two people here. Michael Poblowski can talk about history, but I also have Lisa, who has a summary of some of our contributions in the past. So Lisa, would you mind responding?
Let's do the easy part, working backwards.
That's fine with me. I like it.
In '22, the permit was pulled by Mr. Shannon. 21 and 20, there were no parades due to COVID. 2019, the parade was canceled due to inclement weather. From about 2014 and 2015, the then city manager indicated that the city would support in the amount of $8,000. And I'm not talking about the cost for public safety, the barricades, but direct payment for various different expenses in about $8,000. Prior to that, it was in the $30,000 range.
30,000?
Yes, ma'am.
30,000 in direct
Support,
support to.
yes.
Some years ago.
So the parade has evolved over time and changed. Other events have come on. So the then city manager set a limit, including city support and functions, of $8,000.
Including police and all that stuff?
No, that would be separate.
Separate?
Yes, ma'am.
So 8,000.
Yes. So currently, if to support the rentals, because it's a lengthy parade, and for the announcers, we're in the $15,000 range of city support directly for those. And that's the type of support we would provide for any other parade like Denby Days.
And yet we don't provide for them today.
Yes, ma'am. Last year was the first that Denby Days was city-sponsored event. We provide barricades and porta-johns, and less than that, it would be about $3,500. It's a different event, different location, different formats, so it's hard to compare.
But the city do sponsor the festival part of their.
Yes.
And so I know we talked a few months ago about how council was going to be able to support 3 or 4 parades. I don't want to jump ahead. I think the name of the game is parity. There's different events. I don't think this is an outrageous request. I know I've talked to some of you briefly. Would love to hear other comments, but I think this is important to a lot of people in this community.
Yeah, I mean, I can support it. I just want to make sure we have a Demi Day parade, we have Southeast, but we need to make sure we're going to have some kind of central parade, some form.
Hilton, right? That's what we said, the 3 when we originally
Okay.
spoke. So we can support, yeah.
Well, Hilton's really not in central. It's in the south, but I mean,
come on.
but we still need to make sure we're balancing out the parades. But I can support the 7,500. Just make sure we're having some kind of festival throughout the city when we're dealing with the central district.
I think these are grassroots organizations that the people in Denver just said, I want to do a parade. The people in the East End said, I want to do a parade. Nobody from the central district came and said, I want to do a parade. And I don't think the city's in the business of just, doing parades. The last time we tried it, it wasn't that successful. So I think if a group in the central district said, we want to do a parade, I'm sure the council will support those efforts.
And that's why I said I'm willing to support it. Just if a group does step up from central, I'd love to see council support that too as well. That's it.
These conditions that you recommend, is this something that will be something will follow in the future, or is this just for this event specifically?
The recommendations in this case are consistent with what we have done in recent years to support the Southeast Community Day parade. You can, and I would recommend, as we think more comprehensively about this, because there are lots of moving pieces. We have public safety in the room. We have a lot of people, as you all know. We've had this conversation many times. The resources required to support and sustain these activities, even the One City Marathon, is a tremendous lift. So, I mean, I think we need to really, develop a sort of predictive outlook on these events and be able to ensure that we have adequate resources and that, we're planning them appropriately. But I don't know of any specific set of rules that say this is how we would treat a request in this fashion, other than the one standard which we ask all community-based organizations to meet, and that is providing adequate information with regard to bylaws and so on and so forth, which is what this code section references. It's the same standard you use for your community support and assistance grants that you make during the approval of the general operating budget.
Well,
I just want to say I certainly support it, but only with conditions that you've laid out in the A, B, and C. I think that is essential, that it be spelled out that way.
Agreed. And I think with those conditions, I think it looks like we have, I have a bunch of heads being nodded. Can we go ahead and just take a vote? Can someone make a motion, please?
I move that we support the Southeast Day funding as written in this document that you provided.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Bethany,
4.
Councilman Ely,
4.
Councilman Harris,
4.
Mayor Jones,
4.
Councilman Long,
4.
Councilwoman Vick,
4.
Councilwoman Woodbury. 4. Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Those would be the parameters.
Yes, Councilman Woodbury. No further business or comments, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. I just have a few things before we go into a closed meeting. The first thing is I want to just give a shout out and thank you to Councilman Long for your work with the HRTPO and PDC. Basically, there are 4 big regional boards that the mayor serve on, and usually 2 of those the mayor delegates to a council member. I'm going to take those back because I think it's important that I think the big push in the region is going to be on this tunnel and the bridges and all the things that are happening. And so thank you for letting me to grab those back. I know you're doing a lot of work with the Bloomberg program. You're putting in a lot of hours, and so we want to say we appreciate you. Talking to Mr. Archer, I know there was input from council that we wanted to look at different ways that a council member can sort of sponsor a department. We're still looking at a sort of hybrid where infrastructure and development, but sort of a one-stop shop that council can go to, and we can flesh that out. I think the big thing is there's so much to do in the city that I think everyone knows that Councilman Long likes to do housing, right? So you could sponsor that department, you could sort of work together. We're gonna work with the language, but I think if you could just think about like what's something that's a passion project of yours, if it's the park, if it's the youth, if it's, I don't know if anyone does engineering, right? Waterworks, like whatever, for me, innovation is sort of a passion project, right? So whatever your passion project is, just think about it. Mr. Archer has a plan for ways that we can do a sort of a touch point just to make it more responsive in City Hall, and we can talk about that later. But a big part of that is going to be, I know there were some department head meetings that didn't happen in January, but ideally, once you were sort of a sponsor of a department, then like you could do all of those meetings. So I know for the department heads, let's try to like reschedule some of those meetings. I'll try to hit all of them, but I think the council members that are assigned to a department, I think that's a good way that they can just sort of deep dive into one department. We had a few calls and emails about credit cards that have been happening over the past few weeks. And so talking to the manager, and I agree with this, I would love to see some sort of formal handbook for council. A lot of other cities have it. I think Vice Mayor Coleman tried years ago, but it's got to pass through council. I think with a governance structure, I think that will help to clean up some things. The formal handbook can include a lot of things. It can include media, it can include ethics, travel policy, sister cities, NLC, council aids. Like, there's a lot of stuff that's sort of in the middle, and I think it's my responsibility to help codify that. And so would love input on that, because ultimately I can't travel everywhere. And so like, I know all of you are going to NLC. We need that to happen. We need Councilman Woodbury to keep going to sister cities. There's a lot of things that have to happen, but we need to codify that. And that is going to, I know we're almost done with it. Do you want to make a comment about that, or? Not to put you on the spot.
I think I have to now. I think not to prolong the discussion. There are some really good handbooks that I've had an opportunity to review and to talk to other managers in other communities about how they're used. And there's one very appealing thing about how a neighboring jurisdiction uses, the handbook. And that is, as a part of the onboarding process for new council members, there's an opportunity for the council to review the handbook. And so if you have new council members coming on, not only do you want them to understand and adopt the handbook, but it's also an opportunity for conversation for new council members about any areas that they may want to add to or they may want to have further discussion about. So there's an ongoing review process and a renewal process for both existing council members and new council members coming on. And so I think it's a document that I think would serve you well and would be a good companion for really all of us to be mindful of the critical work that we all have to do.
Yeah. And I think that's important, especially because I know the EDA, we want to do more site visits. There are things that we have to get done, and this will just help us just put things in writing for all of us.
And I do have one thing to add to that.
Yep.
Because another thing about our travel and how life has changed, the rules are still from the past, but life has changed. Because particularly I know several times as I've been in the airport, getting ready to check my luggage for NLC, they will say, well, we do have an upgrade to business class, and you get two pieces of luggage, and you save $40. That's nothing. I mean, that's what's happening now on airlines. But the reflection of our documentation usually says something about no upgrades and none of this, when we really need to bring the rules up to the reality in which society has changed.
No, agreed. So I'm gonna work hand in hand with the manager on that, and it's got to pass through all of you, but I think that will just help to clarify things, especially as we have NLC in a few weeks. I think Mr. Kramer, is he still here? Is he in the back? Tom, are you in the back? All right, so there are two committees that we're going to look to get started here pretty soon. The first is something called a Town and Gown Committee. A lot of cities have a standing committee with the city and its university. Hampton has it, Virginia Beach, there's a lot of cities that have it. We have never had it, or maybe we've had a smaller sort of thing. And so I asked my friends from CNU, I appreciate you coming down. I had a chance to meet the new president this past week. I know we have the inauguration on Monday, so it's going to be a big day for our city. But we are always going to be linked, CNU and the city, and I believe that establishing for the first time a Town and Gown Committee is going to help strengthen that. You want to say anything, Tom?
No, thank you, Phil.
Yeah. Can you give him the mic just for the?
Sure.
Yeah.
No, first off, I'll just want to say thank you to council for all of your support of Christopher Newport. We have, two of our banner programs at the city, actually three, whether you look at the Ferguson Center, the Torgler Center, or Community Captains, that all comes through the city, and we appreciate your support of those programs. Like Philip said, President Kelly started on July 1st, and he's very much a partnership-oriented university president after a 36-year career in the Coast Guard. Teamwork is sort of his thing, and so he's thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled to be here to sort of represent him, and I expect that you will see me more often, and I hope to get him here to say hello to you all very soon. So, Phil, thank you.
Thanks, Tom. And if you can make it out on Monday, I know I'll be there most of the day, but it should be a great time for our city. The second committee that I do want to bring back is the Mayor's Committee for People with Disabilities. I know a lot of cities have that. I think ours went away a few years ago. Let's bring that back. Not a must happen tomorrow, but by next fiscal quarter, we'd love to see that back. And the last thing that I have is sort of a question for council. I know we discussed moving meetings around. I think that needs to happen, but I want to just clarify 2 points. I don't want to make it where it's people are trying to go to city council and it's like, is it going to be in uptown today? Is it downtown? There really has to be a schedule. So what I would like to see is for next year to see it actually published out. But for this year, I think it makes sense to have maybe one in the central and then one in the north. Does that work for everyone? So 2 times, and we'll publish it with enough time, but 2 times this year, we're going to have it not being downtown. Is that fine with everyone?
It's fine, but I think there should be some, as I've mentioned before, there should be a school bus or something that if people want to come and speak, if they don't have transportation, we ought to provide it to come to Central or to come to the North and be available for that. And I think that would be easily done. And I just don't want to see anybody left out because they don't have transportation.
Agreed, and I think we can definitely take a look at it and see some options in the future. But is that okay? We can do one in the central and one in the north for this calendar year? Is everyone fine with that?
Yes.
Okay, we can make a note of that. And that's all I have. Councilman Harris?
I don't have anything.
Councilman Woodbury? Councilman Vick?
Oh, I don't have anything.
Councilman Neely?
Nothing.
Councilman Long?
I do have 2 things. One, this dealing with the HRPDC. One of the things that Mayor Jones talked about, I serve on that board, and I'm still going to be on the board. I'm just now the additional member. But the HRPDC, I'm on a subcommittee for housing. And so one of the things that we've been talking about is a regional housing study, and they've asked cities to participate in that process. I brought some packets, not to belabor the time, but I brought some packets to the last. But they're looking at rental, home ownership, special population, as in senior housing, existing homeowners, poverty, and then homelessness. So I have some information here. If we want to have a work session in the future, it's a prerogative of the city council. The September 28th meeting will be the time where they'll want some more input from city staff to participate. So if we wanted to have a work session either the September 1st or the second meeting in September, I could try to get HRPDC over there. And like I said, I have the pamphlets. The second thing, after the last work session, I had a few calls dealing with the downtown revitalization. 2 people actually called, one dealing with the train station and the Greek church, and I'll talk to you, Florence, afterwards. And they just wanted more information about the process of private participation in that. So just want to make sure, as we're transforming downtown, revitalizing, we have opportunity for other private partnerships to be developed here in the city. But like I said, I'll speak to you after the work session. Okay.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
I think the only thing that I want to mention right now is more so just a flag. I know we talked about briefly looking at our boards and commissions. Hopefully at some point that will get on the slate, so that way we could thoroughly go through and make sure we're using modern practices with our boards and commissions, and also just going through how we're going to recruit folks, all of it. And I just hope that at some point it doesn't have to be soon. I just wanted to flag for everybody.
Yeah.
We should definitely do that.
Perfect.
And that's it.
Okay. I think that ends the comments, ideas, suggestions. Can I have a motion to take us into closed meeting?
Okay. I move that pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A of the Code of Virginia 1950 as amended, subsections 1, 3, and 7, that the council hold a closed meeting for the purpose of 1, discussion, consideration, or interview of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salary, disciplining, or resignation of specific public officers, appointees, or employees of any public body. Include discussion or consideration of prospective candidates for appointments to boards and commissions, subject which is performance of a council appointee. And 3, a discussion or consideration on disposition of real property where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the city, the subject of which is the disposition of real property located outside the city. And 7, consultation with the legal counsel and briefings by staff members or consultants pertaining to actual and probable litigation where such consultation or briefing and open meetings will adversely affect the negotiating posture of the public body, and consultation with legal counsel employed or retained by a public body regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel, subject of which is the case involving tort claims.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Bethany,
4.
Councilman Ely,
4.
Councilman Harris,
4.
Mayor Jones,
4.
Councilman Long,
4.
Councilwoman Vick,
4.
Councilwoman Woodbury. Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you, everyone.
Make sure the mics are on.
make a motion, I'll move that members of council certify that to the best of each member's knowledge, one, only public business matter lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and two, only public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting by council.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Bethany.
4.
Councilman Ely.
4.
Councilman Harris.
4.
Mayor Jones.
4.
Councilman Long.
4.
Councilwoman Vick. 4. Councilwoman Woodbury. 4. Motion carried 7-0.
I think that's everything. I think we stand adjourned. Thank you.